Okay, Loa, I think I'm gonna get started if you're okay. Okay, I see you're muted.
I think it's okay. We are on time. Yeah, let's go.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to MPLS Working Group session. We are meeting in IETF 111. We are still virtually meeting this time, and hopefully next time will be in-person meeting. The chairs of MPLS Working Group are myself, Tarek, Loa, and Nick. Unfortunately, Nick was not able to meet with us this time, but myself and Loa are here. Our secretary is Mac Chen, and he will, he's doing a great job helping in multiple things, and he's going to take minutes as we go along. Thanks, Mac. We are meeting once this IETF session, and this is this session Wednesday, and it's a 1-hour session. This is the note well. You're probably acquainted with it. If not, please do so. It basically governs everything, all participation in IETF or any contributions we make with IETF. Some administrative reminders, blue sheets, I think it's done automatically nowadays with Meet Echo. Please get into the queue if you want to ask a question. Do not unmute yourself and immediately and speak unless being asked to by the chairs. For those who use Jabber, there is the link there, but you can use the chat provided by Meet Echo. That also works, and it's been archived. Minutes are being taken in CodeMD. The link is there. I also put it in the chat, so if you can help take minutes, please do so. In terms of the agenda and slides, the URLs are there if you need to access at any time. This is our agenda. We have 7 items on the agenda, including the working group status update. Some of the status reports will be done, or some of the presentations will be done verbally. We will mention which ones accordingly. This time we have no errata reported. In terms of the document status, we have 2 new RFCs that got published since last IETF 110. Again, as usual, we thank all who contributed, the authors and Shepherd and the ADs and the working group for producing these documents. We have two. Yeah.
Yes. One quick thing here. I want to extend a thank you to Adrian for shepherding the what is now RFC 9041. I asked him kind of a year ago, and I don't think he realized how complicated it would be. But he done a great job, and the document is in very good shape now.
Indeed, I will second that as well. Thank you, Adrian. I know he did a great job in making this happen, making this document happen. Okay, we have 2 documents in the RFC editor queue. One of them will be on the agenda. I won't mention. I will let Kamran comment on it. And the second one is in MISREF. So if the authors want to comment on that, feel free to come to the mic as usual. In terms of documents in IESG, we have one. It's waiting on the go-ahead. We actually wanted to hear feedback from the authors if they're attending today on the MPLS LSP ping OSPF v3 code point. I'm not sure if any of the authors are attending and they want to comment. Please do come to the mic if you are.
Tarek, I have one
Yeah.
comment on the previous slide on the SFL drafts. Actually, the draft we are waiting for are currently in working group last call, I think. So that should go ahead.
Yep. Okay, that's great. And I see. Okay. Yeah, I did mention waiting on this draft, and it's great to know that it's in working group last call. Thank you. Further documents that are being.
Okay. Sorry,
Sorry?
I'm an author on that. I'm an author on that draft that it's waiting on. It should be shortly after the IETF. We've gotten some late comments on a second Yang doctor review and a couple others, and I think it should be sent to IETF last call pretty quickly.
Thank you, AC. Yeah, some of the working group documents, they're waiting for some feedback from the working group before we progress further to working group last call. So feel free, working group, to engage and provide feedback on those documents. We have a document for the Yang MLDP, and it's on the agenda. We will talk about it. And the one which has just been refreshed, and authors will resume traction on that. That's the feedback. Individual documents, we have a lot of those, and many are not on the agenda this time. So we expect the authors in maybe next IETF to do some traction on those. Some of them are on the agenda today, so we will be talking about them. Before I flip, sorry. So we have a number of the individual drafts that are candidate for working group adoption, and we already kickstarted the process. Some of them got review comments, and the authors are working on the review comments addressing. And specifically, we have asked these two drafts, draft 9N and draft RATI. If you've addressed all the comments from the review team, please signal back so that we can progress further in the adoption. Again, if the authors are there and you want to comment, feel free to come to the mic. Lastly, I think this is my last slide. More documents. Some of them are on the agenda. With that, I conclude my status update.
Tarek, one more comment. Some of the documents listed here were on the agenda for the joint meeting yesterday. So, for example, the extension header drafts.
Indeed. Yeah, those, and in fact, draft Compella MPLS MSPL 4A was presented as well. I should have mentioned that. We had a joint session yesterday with PALS and DETNet working group, and some of the drafts were presented there. And if attendees are interested in those, they can go back to the joint session and see the materials. Any other feedback and comments from the authors before I switch to the next item on the agenda? Okay. I'll give it to Kamran, who's second on my agenda. So, one moment, please. Kamran, you have 5 minutes or so. I'll give you that 5 minutes. You can go ahead now.
Hello, you hear me?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
I can hear you.
All right.
Okay, thank you, Tariq and team. So I think I'm asked to provide a quick update on our Yang data models for LDP and MLDP. Just giving a very short update on both LDP and MLDP on behalf of our co-authors. LDP was kind of touched earlier by Tariq, but I'll revisit quickly. One slide, next slide, please. So for LDP Yang, it has been, last update was in March 2020. That was, to be published, RFC, and it was submitted to ISG, and it is, as Tariq mentioned, it is sitting right now in RFC editor queue due to a misreference and pending on routing working group policy model, which itself was, I think, submitted to ISG for publication in Jan this year with revision 27. But I see there more revision has been uploaded, and the ISG status for this particular routing working group policy model is it's waiting for AD go ahead, perhaps with the revised IDs are needed. So I guess once routing working group policy model moves, our LDP Yang will finally get published. There's nothing pending from our side. Next slide, please. So MLDP Yang, so I think that's where things have been a bit slow lately. Just to remind us that where we are right now and over the course of last few IETFs. So we had, for MLDP Yang has gone through already Yang Director review, an early review that was kindly done by AC Lindum on a revision 3 of the working group document. Very detailed comments, and they were addressed, and review was completed and acknowledged by AC. And on behalf of author, thank you, AC, for taking time to do detailed review. And after that, working group last color was initiated on revision 6, and it was closed with some comments which were addressed. So current revision we have is revision 8, but really that was submitted March 2021. But really, in all essence, there have been no major update to this model since revision 05. And one of the main reasons have been that during this time, it is same set of there's a overlap of authors that are trying to drive the both LDP Yang and MLDP Yang, and authors were trying to prioritize LDP Yang to push to ISG. And the last comments that we are getting, so it slacked a bit. And afterwards, I think for various reasons, it hasn't been updated. So this is the current status. And next slide, please. However, because as of working group last comments, we are now working on a model update. And one good thing about this is that while most of the MLDP specific questions so far have been caught in Yang Director review, and we have addressed, but the base fundamental, some of the fundamental questions and issues are no different than what we had already addressed in LDP Yang. So MLDP Yang was an offshoot of LDP Yang, of course. So it inherits lots of those issues. So which really, if I have to enumerate some of them, we have to make them NMDS style Yang. Security sections have to be updated. We have to specify, default values for some of the parameters. The detailed discussion or what is base and what is extended, feature that we had on LDP. Similar things are for MLDP. But having done those discussion already in LDP, it should be a smoother, journey for MLDP. That's what we believe. So what we are right now doing is that we are working on applying all the applicable changes that were already provided on LDP Yang as part of the AD review, routing director review, Gen Art, and security director reviews, and there are significant of them, and we are applying those changes as we speak, and we expect to submit the updated revision in a week or maximum 2 weeks time frame going forward. And of course, we wanted to push it through, once more through the working group and the ISG procedures. That's an update on my side. I'll take any question from chairs or the working group.
Hi, Kamran. I have a question for you. We have on the agenda today multi-topology with MLDP.
Yes.
It's being presented. Is that covered by the MLDP Yang model? Or how do you think you will tackle that?
No, it is not. But actually, if I remind ourselves that even LDP Yang model, LDP Yang, MLDP is, of course, offshoot of that. LDP Yang, multi-topology was, we had put that out of scope in upfront. So in LDP Yang as well, multi-topology is out of scope. Having said that, if the multi-topology and MLDP, is because it's going through working group now, we can definitely have a separate Yang. But short answer is that LDP or MLDP does not cover, Yang models do not cover multi-topology yet.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Okay. Any other questions for Kamran? Okay, thank you, Kamran. I'll switch to the next on our agenda. And Loa will give us an update on the activity for MPLS Open Design Team. Go ahead, Loa.
Okay, thank you. I will try to make this short. We had a good report from Stuart at the joint meeting, and I just cut that report back a little bit, and I'm making a short report here. Next slide, please. So we have some data around the design team, but we haven't been working since beginning of April, and we have been trying to figure out what the problem really is. And you can go to the next slide. So we had an input of lots of contribution, not lots of, but a number of contributions to the MPLS working group. And we were increasingly concerned that there were a contention between those contributions, especially when it comes to carrying ancillary data after the label stack and indicators in the stack. So if you need to read up on this, go and read Stuart's document. He promised to update it with the version 1 after the meeting. So please go to the next slide. I have a we have been going around and around a bit to actually find out what we should do, but I think that now we have a pretty good understanding of what we want to do. We want to before we actually start deciding on solutions, we need to understand what we really want to do, and that we call requirements. And to actually get the requirements in shape, we need to start looking at use cases. Some of the components that goes into those use cases are what we call indicators, something you put in the stack to tell the receiving node that there is something you need to do about this packet. That can be done based on explicit auxiliary data, or actually the indicator could be enough in itself and you know what to do. Details again found in Stuart's report, and we have one thing that is the reason I really wanted to make this report here. So go ahead to the next slide. So this is what the design team agreed on, and don't take the agreed on too literally. It was an editing meeting, and that is the text that meeting produced. And we will try to read it a couple of more times and see if we need to make any clarification. But sometime in the week after the IETF, we will send this out to the MPLS working group for a consensus call. And it's basically about the indicators, what you put in the label stack to tell a receiving node that there is something that needs to be done. and some thoughts around that also. So when we actually send out the consensus call, we will send it to the MPLS working group and to the chairs of the other working groups, and they can forward it to their working groups as they want. And please respond to this, because this will be a foundation that we will be working from. And the next step we will take here is that we will start looking at pretty much the same way, I guess, on how the metadata or the auxiliary data, how we treat that, and what the NCAP looks. The other part of the news is that the design team will continue to work in the period between this IETF and the next IETF, pretty much in the same style, and also on Thursday evenings, at least if you're in Europe. Okay, questions? Okay, I'm done. Thanks.
You. I'll move ahead. Kiriti's presentation.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Kiriti. I think you don't have many slides, but you know.
No, I just have basically one, not counting this one. So if you go to the next slide.
Okay.
I also don't have much time, but I just want to give a quick recap. We kept this document alive. I made a few small changes, but basically the main point of the document was to get a code point so that we can, an SPL, so that we can do an early allocation, so that we can do an implementation. And then that whole thing sort of got sidetracked because with the FAI, the forwarding actions indicator, we said we don't need a code point for this, we need a code point for FAI. But if you do that, then this would become just a bit within that. So the question of whether we proceed with the FAI or whether we have to have a SPL for NFFR or no further pass readout has to be resolved. But that still leaves us sort of hanging in terms of the early allocation. So it would be good to get some guidance from the chairs on how we can get early allocation, or do we have to wait for this thing to be resolved? The other thing I wanted to talk about was that we think that the technical foundation for the draft is pretty solid. We have done a fair number of examples. We have taken into account the feedback we got on the mailing list. And at the last IETF, we didn't talk much about this, but mostly because of everything was redirected to talking about FAI. But having said that, I think even though there's work to be done, I think this is ready to be adopted as a working group document. And from there, we have to, finalize issues like the first one that's here. That's basically all I had.
Okay, thank you. I think from from my side at least, and I'll let Loa comment. We want to progress with adoption, and I don't see that the special purpose label or the FAI is going to necessarily block adoption of the document. Given that we, the MPLS design team is converging on, not assigning an SPL per application. So that's my perspective is if you think the document is in a good shape to progress, we will get it into the process.
Agreed.
Yeah, I basically agree. I'm still a bit confused because I don't want to do an early allocation for something that is not going to happen. That's kind of against the early allocation process. But I think we could converge on using the phi style of indication, and then we need to put that into the document somewhere.
Sure. So I can make the FAI a normative reference from here, and we can handle the allocation in the FAI. So I just wanted to get that clarification. So I guess I have it to some extent, that we will figure out how to allocate indicators, whether it is bits in the FAI or we have standalone SPLs. I think I agree with you that we should not be looking for standalone SPLs. So I'm happy to take the first bullet off the table for now, even though we won't get our early allocation. And then as we progress with work from the design team, we'll come back to this question.
So that actually triggers a question for me. Will we need to have a register for what are assigned as flags for the FIA?
So I think we would, especially because we now talk about an extension header. So of the 11 bits that go with the TTL field, we're likely to have used them all up because, like I said, we have 6 outstanding requests anyway. So we're probably close to using them all up. But we have an extension bit. And definitely the extension bit we won't use up, hopefully not in the coming IETF2. So we should create an IANA registry. So then when someone wants to create a new indicator, it probably should be standard action and it should be registered in IANA.
Okay, I agree.
Yeah, so when I update the FAI, I will add that. I'm done, yeah.
Oh, there is a question, looks like, in somebody in the queue. Rakesh, you meant to ask a question?
Hi, this is a question more for Tarek and Loa. So, for example, MPLS IOAM in a similar boat where there is an indicator label being asked, and then we spin up the MPLS design team, and maybe if you use the indicator label or FAI to say there is IOAM. And so we did the MPLS RT experts review, and then we didn't do the adoption because of this design team. So is it fair to say that all the drafts waiting on indicator labels is okay to adopt and handle it as part of the working group process?
I think, so let me express it like this. All the documents that are hanging on how we do the allocation of the indicator are in a situation now where we can start the process for working group adoption. So I think for your draft, you are probably fine to send the request to the working group chairs. And you can point out that they asked before, but I think we are ready to start working on it.
Okay, yeah, no, that's good to know, because there will be some churn as part of the MPLS design team. Could be FAI, and maybe, I don't think we have converged yet, but if working group is okay to take documents in that shape and work on it and churn it as design team agrees on the solution, that's fine as well.
Well, I kind of agree with you, but it's not the design team that takes decision, it's the working group. So it will be discussed in the design team, The working group will be informed of what the siting think, and then the working group needs to take the decision.
Okay.
I,
Yeah, thanks.
I also agree that it should not hold the process of being adopted document, but if in place where you're asking for the SPL, you can elaborate and say, we have options that we're considering in addition, so that the reviewers of the document understand that you're, considering other options as well. So that's a feedback from me, Rakesh.
Yeah, I think looking when we did the MPLS RT experts review, the comments came as the MPLS label stack getting too big as part of the review, and that's how all this design team work started, and then FAI proposal came as well. So and then the draft was on hold. So I'm just asking for some clarification. But if I think there is some good answers, so we can request for adoption now.
Okay, thank you, Kiriti, again. I'll switch to the next presentation on my agenda. I think it's Lo Yan, if I'm not mistaken. Is it Lo Yan? Yeah, Lo Yan. Yeah, your voice is very faint. If you can get closer to the mic.
Okay, is it better?
Yeah, much better now. Yeah.
Thank you. This draft is about to suggest signal degrade indication in segment routing over MPLS network. Next slide, please. In this slide, we introduce the motivation for this draft. The signal degrade is an important situation in the practical network. It brings significant impact to voice and other services. So we think in the network, the signal degrade should be monitored, detected, and reported, especially if the signal degrade is generated in the intermediate node in a parse. The intermediate node should detect it and reported the signal to the source or the destination node. Then the source and destination node usually will trigger the protection mechanism by this signal degrade effect. But when segment routing over MPLS network, the intermediate node has no knowledge of forwarding labels, so signal degrade defect can't be spread to edge node to trigger the end-to-end protection mechanism. So we think we should have a mechanism to solve this problem. Next slide, please. This scenario is a traditional network parse. We can say if the intermediate node, it has a high BER, it should detect this situation and report this situation to the end nodes. The problem is how to set the indication to the ingress or egress node to trigger the parse adjustment. Next slide, please. When segment routing is introduced to the MPLS, the intermediate node has no knowledge of the labels, so it can't generate a new message for the signal degrade OM message without the label information. So we suggest to use the existing OM message to indicate the SD signal. We think the CCM message is the best choice for two reasons. First, the CCM is designed to be used for fault detection, performance monitoring, and protection switchover. And secondly, the CCM is transmitted in the parse periodically, so it's better to use this message to carry the SD flag. In the CCM flags, we choose a flag. It's a reserved bit in the flag field. We called it EI, the error indication. If the SD occurs, the indication this bit is set to the value 1. If there is no signal degrade situation, it's set to the 0 value. Next slide, please. Compared with the last version, we update this context. The first is and the background of MPLS TP network in the draft. Secondly, further clarify the scenario and program, and remove one solution to focus on the MPLS TPOM solution in the MPLS WG. And IANA request, and also and one co-author, Junfen Zhao from CICT. Next slide. So we think this solution is a very lightweight solution, and we already implement and largely deploy this solution in our network. It may request IANA to assign one bit in flex field to indicate SD. Thank you. That's all.
Thanks. I have a question. If I go back to slide, I think it is 4. Are you asking for new channel type in the gas channels? Is that are you asking for a new channel type?
The new is belong to the flag field, reserved bit.
Right, but it's an existing channel, the type that you're using?
Yeah.
Okay. And you're just reserving a new flag in the flag field?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thanks. We have people in the queue. Fan, go ahead.
I put our request here, because we see there are, it is the problem originated from the MPLS TP. So, and we would like to ask MPLS working group to assign or the IANA to assign one bit from the flag field, and to let the error indication can be spread to the networks. So that this is the main goal of this draft. Actually, from previous draft and previous meeting, that we present the importance of the indication of signal degrade. So I think we think it's important to have this have this function. I would like to confirm with a working group to see if it is suitable for MPLS working group to proceed this work.
Yeah, more feedback from the working group is welcome on this, and then we can progress on the IANA allocation. Yui is next in the queue.
Speaking, and given that the channel type you did assign to ITUT G.8113.1, so I think that error indication assignment should work within ITU D.8113.1 rather than MPLS-TTP working group. Of course, that sharing information with the MPLS working group is useful, but I think this assignment should be also agreed in ITUT G.8113.1. That's my comment. Thank you.
It's a great feedback. I honestly, maybe Loa or anyone who's done allocations in MPLS TP can comment, but I'm not sure is it handled outside MPLS working group. Loa, you want to comment?
I want to think about it a bit. We have assigned code points before on requests from the ITUT study group 15, and I think other study groups also. But that is a request, and we have decided. We can send them a liaison to comment on this allocation, and then we can go ahead and make the decision in the MPLS work group as usual.
Great, thanks. Greg, you want to go next?
Actually, I'm a little bit confused. My understanding of this proposal is that because it uses existing channel type that is part of IANA registry, the OEM PDU defined by ITUT and flag registry, my understanding is not in IANA registry. Because I looked in the document and it does not refers to any IANA registry by the name. So I'm not sure that this is something that we need to allocate, assign. So seems like it might be more appropriate to ask ITUT, because this common OEM PDU format is defined in this ITUT document.
I see. I guess this is related to Loa's comment. We need to dig more. Is it going to be a request from ITU on their behalf? We'll do allocation, or there is no IANA at all for the flags that we maintain?
That's my understanding.
Yeah. Okay. Loa, you want to add anything before we switch?
I'm trying to read the documents, and I need more time to look at this. But the thing is that all of the code points are allocated by decision in the MPLS working group. Outside from the MPLS working group, you can send in a request or whatever you want to do, and we can action on it.
Okay, thank you, Fan. And anything else before we switch to the next topic? I guess no other questions.
Yeah, not questions, just clarification for the confusion. Actually, as the authors of this draft, that we also confused about the location that where we should apply for this. Apply. We should apply for this request. So, but because I read a lot I read some documents on drafts, and it said that all the related after the joint work between ITOT and IETF, all the extension work based on MPLS at TP should belong to IETF. So we apply this request here. Another reason is that the ITOT standards is close to almost 5 years. So we think it's better to start initiate this work from IETF, if possible, or if it necessary, that IETF can send a liaison to ITOT to see how we can do this, proceed this work, because this actually this modification is very small. It's just applying a flag. So that actually we need the suggestion from chairs, and from maybe we can send liaison to ITOT for further clarification. Thank you.
Okay, I think the feedback Loa gave, and I also support him, is, we will need to do a little bit background investigation on this and get back to you. I suggest you send an email to the working group Elias as well, so that we can, anybody else wants to comment, they can also comment on that. But we're going to get back to you from the chairs. Yui, you are in the queue. Do you want to ask a question before I flip to the next?
That's a minor comment that found at she said that ITU will close, but it is not closed, but it's contribution driven in ITUT, so that same contribution to study group 15, question 10. So question 10 considers on it with coordination with MPLS working group. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, that's good to know. Luyan, did you want to ask anything before we switch?
Yeah, because this draft is the background to solve the segment routing over MPLS network. The segment routing is belong to the IETF work. So I think maybe it's better to set a liaison to ITOT, but if we direct propose the contribution to ITOT, the background is not belong to the ITOT work region. Thank you.
Okay, Luyan, I think we have at least a tentative plan to progress on that. In interest of time, I want to switch to the other slide, and like we agreed, we're going to follow up on this offline. Mankamana, you're next.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So good afternoon, guys. This is Mankamana Misra from Cisco Systems, and I'll be presenting MLDP extension for multi-topology routing on behalf of my other authors. So we can go to the next slide. So somehow I can't see the full slide. Is it because of it's too big? I can see only half of the content.
Yeah, I got the tip. I think it was Adrian. On the top left of your screen, there's a gray box with a zoom, icon. Click on that, and you'll get to see better.
Okay. Yeah. So just a little bit of background and history about this draft. So initially this draft was submitted somewhere around 2011, and after that I think there was not much interest within Cisco and across vendors and maybe even at the field, and this draft was kind of died. And after that IETF111, this was presented again, and it died for the second time. And we didn't have any much progress in this area for some point of time, but now there is interest in this particular work, not only interest with respect to implementation, in fact deployment as well. And that is the reason I am bringing the draft again back to working group. And just to give that the content of the draft is exact same as what was earlier. So there is no change as of now, and all the updates are planned after this idea. Yeah, next slide. So just to give little background, that MPR has been defined for LDP and RFC 7307, and it does define some extra set of CLVs where IP address will also IP address is going to carry information about MPID, and there were 16-bit reserved space. And this space has been created both for IPv4 address and IPv6 address. So basically, this is the v4 and v6 address families has been defined in 7307 for MPR. Next slide. So what this draft is extending is how to achieve same MTR functionality for MLDP. So LDP was 7307 defined for unicast, but this draft is defining how to achieve that MTR functionality with point-to-multipoint MLDP protocol. And it has both for MPFAC element and for typed wildcard MPFAC element. And it also introduced a capability for MT multipoint capability. So basically, all the LDP neighbors, when they are exchanging their capabilities, they can exchange a capability about this multi-topology routing support. Next slide. So the previous slide was talking about one of the work, which is multi-topology routing. Another thing, there is already a good amount of interest in flex IGP algorithms. So earlier there was a 2 draft, which I think has been merged into single working group draft, which is IETF LSR Flex Algo, and it defines different algorithms and how to carry it within IGP. So basically, this Flex Algo is nothing but providing you a lightweight mechanism to define a constraint-based topologies. Now this we can think of this way, that when we are talking about multi-topology, within a single topology, you may have multiple flex algorithms. So it is kind of one more layer of segmentation within the network. And this is pretty useful for live or maybe multiple redundant topologies within a single topology. And next slide. So in order to support this Flex Algo, what we have done is in the slide 3, we did talk about 7307 TLV, which was our address family definition. So that had 16-bit reserve. So out of 16-bit, now 8-bit will be used for IPA, and this IPA is nothing but going to provide information about which flex algorithm is being used. Yeah, next. And how while doing MLDP FEC exchange, so combination of MTID plus IPA is going to create a unique FEC. So while building a point-to-multipoint tree, when peers are exchanging their FEC for label bindings, multicast label bindings, so the MLDP FEC will carry both MTID and IPA. So when for any given route with MTID plus IPA, it is going to give a unique FEC or a unique tree within a given flex algo. And that's all it had. So any questions, any comments? So the plan is to update the draft, because there is some cleanup needed. There are some old reference of older drafts which have been either which have become now either working group draft, or there are a couple of drafts which have been merged, or there are some new RFC which have been created. So we will clean up the draft, and then we will request for more comments from working group and adoption as well. And there is already implementation existing for this draft. So that's all.
Thank you. I want any questions for my comment? We don't have much time for the other speaker. So yeah, please provide feedback to Mankamana over the list, and I'll switch to Reggie, who's our last speaker.
Actually, I'll be presenting.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I need to find your slides though. Yeah, I found them.
Yeah. All right, thanks. Yeah, so Reggie, unfortunately, it's like 3, 4 in the morning for him, so he didn't He asked me to present. So it'll be pretty quick. Next slide, please. So just a quick recap. What this is proposing is to use an ARP mechanism with a small change in the hardware type, so that the box X can say, I would like a label to reach Y. The router T1 can say, okay, here's a label. It'll do all the stitching necessary, and then when X sends packets with that label, they'll end up in Y. So we're using a reply request reply mechanism, very much like ARP, to get labels. So this draft has been around for a while. As you can see, we're at revision 10. So next slide, please. So we are actually at a good place in terms of implementation. I should say that the last draft update accidentally reverted some of earlier updates, which will be fixed as soon as we can submit drafts again. But from an implementation point of view, we have a Linux prototype for an LARP server and client. And the goal here is that, typically the ARP client will be a compute server, and the compute server wants to take part in an MPLS network without running LDP and IGP and RSVP and so on. So we have that Linux prototype. There's also a prototype for Tungsten Fabric, which is a data center SDN solution. It's an open source from the Linux Foundation. Today, Tungsten Fabric uses MPLS over UDP for sending packets because typically data center fabrics are IP, but a lot of people are asking for MPLS-based data center fabric. The problem then is, how do I get my server to be part of that? And LARP is a solution to that. A prototype for Junos, which is our operating system, is also in progress. And in recent updates, we added metric and color. And so the Linux prototype, which is the basic request reply, is being extended to include the metric and color. And color is interesting so that you can have multiple paths across the network. It could map to an SR flex algo. It could map to RSVP colors. All of that information is hidden from the server. The LR client can just say, I would like a label to reach the destination, but I would like to go over color, red, and then it would get the appropriate label. So, so that's where we are in terms of implementation. Next slide, please. So we have put a fair amount of details in the draft, and we've talked about things like resilience, ARP being a protocol that if you send a request and it gets lost, you just have to retry. If you send a request and you get a reply, and then for some reason things change, you have to somehow withdraw that. So we've handled many of those. And I think we can continue doing some work there. But meanwhile, I think we're in a pretty stable place. And so we're requesting for working group adoption.
Thank you, Kiriti. I think, we will record your request and put it into the queue of requested adoption documents.
Okay, so I don't have to send a formal request over the mailing list for this one and NFFRR. You've recorded them?
I'm recording it, and feel free. I mean, I think Loa prefers the request on the list.
Okay, I'll do that.
I already recorded your request from my side. No problem.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any questions for Kiriti before we adjourn today's meeting? I think we're on time. That's a good thing.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
All right, no questions. Thank you so much. Thanks all again for attending the working group session, and see you next time in IETF 112.